Hello Team FD and welcome back to Winners and Losers, the show where we take a look at the highs and the lows from the Premier League game week just past. And joining me today, what a special episode we've got lined up for you. It's the Football Social Boys. One last ride until 2020 comes to an end. Lads, thank you very much for joining me. Will back for his second episode in as many weeks. Dave, quite literally a last minute addition. Sam Obaseki was supposed to be on the show, phoned me at 9:57 with suspected food poisoning. I've got to say, if he doesn't have it, he deserves a BAFTA nomination because I could hear his voice quivering over the phone. Dave, I'm going to hand it over to you, mate. How are you? How was your weekend? Feeling positive?
I'm always positive, plenty more points to be played for. It has been okay. It's not been the best of weekends. No, Arsenal ruined it once again. Thank you very much. But we move, right? We have to stay positive. Back Arteta, certain players need to get the old heave ho, mate. Yeah?
I like that. A massive U-turn mid-sentence. Love that. Will, how did the Blues get on?
Lost 1-0. Troy Deeney scored the winner. A bit ironic because he's a Blues fan. But, we move, as Dave Jackson says.
Lovely, jubbly. And you might have to straddle both Blues. You might have to be our substitute Chelsea fan for this show because, of course, there are certain parts of the script geared towards Chelsea because Sam was supposed to make an appearance. But, Will, you're used to stepping in, aren't you, mate? You're like a super sub. You're like Le Fondre. Do you remember him at Reading? What a player he was.
I thought you could have gone down the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer route, but if you want to go Adam Le Fondre, that's fine.
Absolutely spot on. Right, just to give you some heads up on this show, we are going to do 3 sections. We're going to do the talking point, the numbers game returns, and then we're going to do your moments of the weekend. That's you guys at home and the guys wanted to stay in the studio there, but I actually mean on this Zoom call. Hopefully that will be a thing of the past in 2021. Let's kick it off. We'll kick things off with a talking point then, lads, and it is, of course, the Big Six faltering this weekend. It's the first time in 4 years that one of Chelsea, United, Liverpool and City have failed to win in the same weekend. So, to kick things off, which result did you enjoy the most, Will? If we're going to be a little bit sadistic at the start of the show, of course, United drawing, Everton beating Chelsea, Fulham drawing with Liverpool, and Arsenal losing to Burnley. Any game that you enjoyed in particular?
Do we still say Arsenal are part of the top 6, or is that another conversation for another day? Yes, I'm not having a go at that. I love Dave. Dave's one of my best mates, but if we're being truly honest, do we even consider Arsenal part of that top 6? I think most people had predicted Burnley were going to give them a hard time beforehand, and it sort of came to fruition, and it was helped a lot by Arsenal and their players. Granit Xhaka, Mohamed El Nene could have had a red card as well. So, we talk about the tactics of Arteta, but there's just some basic fundamentals that need to be done right, and that's just having discipline and not being an idiot.
That is true. And he did say it was unacceptable after the game. It's the second time in 3 weeks he's had to brandish one of his players unacceptable in a post-match interview, Mikel Arteta. But we'll get on to the Arsenal game. Dave, was there any result you enjoyed in particular before Arsenal lost to Burnley? Because, of course, it looked like the perfect opportunity to regain some ground in that quest for the top 6, let's say.
Yeah, it's weird because obviously I actually want Liverpool to quite handsomely win games now because I don't want to see Spurs anywhere near that championship, right? I said it at the beginning of the season, Spurs under Jose, if he gets them playing, they're going to be a very difficult train to slow down. So it's a really weird time for me. Not only as a man, but also as an Arsenal fan, where I'm actually cheering Liverpool on. So I actually want them to go on and get the winner yesterday, right? So I was a bit disappointed in that. Obviously, I was happy when Palace managed to get their equaliser and then hold on. What a fantastic display from the goalkeeper there. And then any time that Chelsea lose is always a good day, really. So it was actually shaken up to be a pretty decent, weekend. And then what was it, the 58th minute or something like that? That silly plonker, and that's as polite as I can be. Gets himself sent off. Anyway, I think we're going to talk about Arsenal. But yeah, I would say Chelsea losing and Spurs dropping points were particular highlights for me.
Well, let's start with Chelsea then, because the guys in the comments last week did say that they wanted us to have a little bit more match chat rather than jumping into the stats-based quiz. So we've moved that to the second segment. Let's talk Chelsea first and foremost. Of course, Sam This was teed up for him perfectly. He's been giving it big licks in the WhatsApp group for the last few weeks, hasn't he? As Chelsea have sort of picked up a little bit of momentum. But that 1-0 loss to Everton, their first since September, and until Edouard Mendy conceded the penalty, bundling into Calvert-Lewin, absolutely nowhere near the ball. He could literally do no wrong. I think he had 5 clean sheets in 7 going into the game. So I have a question for you boys. I'm going to start with you, Will. Do you think Mendy was the most crucial addition to Chelsea in the summer? Has he been their sort of standout signing?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I just couldn't. But I knew Kepa was bad, and I think it was one of you guys. I think it was actually Doogie who put some stats up about Kepa, about his actual save percentage, or therefore lack of. And it's just absolutely staggering. And I know Twitter's no place to go if you want a tactical analysis when you get a 2-minute 20 compilation video of Kepa's worst mistakes. And maybe that's not the best place to judge his goalkeeping ability on. But some of the goals he was letting in were just, I mean, they were absolutely shocking. So, it takes a lot of stones as well to replace a £70 million keeper, which, I mean, there's an argument there whether it should have been paid. But yeah, definitely the right man to bring in. And obviously it's the saves that he's bringing in, but it's just that bit of confidence to the back line. And we say all this, and then you go to the Everton game at the weekend and he's just had an absolute moment of head loss. But it is the right decision, and yeah, he's definitely brought some confidence to that Chelsea back four.
Yeah, like you said, putting up sort of save after save until that calamitous moment. Jackson, what do you make of the other signings then? Is there any that they've made that make you jealous as an Arsenal fan? Of course, Thiago Silva, Ben Chilwell. There's been plenty of first team additions, and they're looking, or looked prior to this game, like potential championship title contenders. Who would you have nabbed from that crop of players that came in for Arsenal?
I think Chelsea actually bought really, really well. I think obviously I know they couldn't for, was it 18 months or something like that. They had the transfer ban. So Lampard actually built quite a decent base of a decent team, and I think he actually overachieved last season, getting him into the top 4. And then I think he actually bought really, really well this kind of summer. I really like the look of that Ziyech. Have I said that right? Probably not. Yep. But this is the Football Social special, mate. I think in the grand scheme of things, I think he was actually a very, very good price they paid for him. Again, considering we paid where it was 72 million for Pepe, you could have got for half of that. You could have signed that Ziyech. So I like the look of the striker. I know he's not doing. I know, don't get me wrong. Striker's always going to be judged on goals, and I think he is someone who needs to actually score a few more goals. But whenever I've seen him play, he holds the ball out well, brings other players in. And then even being able to keep hold of players like Giroud, who obviously come to the end of his career, he wants to be playing first team football, but Lampard somehow he's actually managed to get him quite happy in this role as, maybe not playing every week, maybe not being a starter, but happy coming on, being a genuine plan B. And I think that's a fantastic bit of management from Lampard there. And I can't believe how positive I'm being about Lampard, because it's what's the point? But I think he's actually done a good job. Oh, and the goalkeeper as well was a very, very good purchase, because as you say, there was so many points last season where what was his name, buddy Kepa, or the other guy, Willie Caballero. You can't build momentum if you're giving away cheap goals, right? You need to be able to go away to teams and win 1-0, and I think that's what this goalkeeper does for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're talking about Timo Werner there, right? Kai Havertz also been a useful addition, let's say, although he's not going through the best time of it at the moment in terms of output, goals and assist wise. Timo Werner looks Premier League ready. He's had a few bizarre moments in recent weeks, including that block on the line from Giroud's header, but we'll forgive him for that. He's going to be an exceptional purchase for Chelsea in the long run, isn't he? But let's go back to the game. Like you said, we are being very positive about Chelsea, but they did lose here, and deservedly so, really. They had a couple of good opportunities, mostly came from their defenders, right? Zuma had a good opportunity from a corner, Reece James threatened from set pieces, and that sort of driven half volley from I think it was a clearance from a corner. But Everton, I think, ultimately deserved their victory, and great penalty by Sigurdsson. literally didn't look at the ball at all, just coolness personified. And he has a really good record against Chelsea, actually. He's scored 2 goals for each of his last 3 clubs against Chelsea, so notched up big fat 6 against them. But this was his first goal of the season in 11 appearances, so he's picked the right time there to show a little bit of form. He also created a whopping 6 chances in this game, so fair play to him. Had probably his best game of the season, and I thought Alan next to him was probably man of the match. 3 tackles, 4 interceptions, 4 dribbles. Everton doing their best work in this game, apart from Sigurdsson, arguably off the ball. But going back to those Chelsea forwards, bit of a quiet day up top for them. So 1 shot apiece from Havertz and Werner, and no chances created by Mason Mount. This is something that I obviously wanted to highlight to Sam, who has been sort of defending them quite rightly, I guess, throughout the course of the season. Only 2 goal involvements for Havertz in 10 games. Will, I'm a massive fan of Pulisic, so when he returns, do you think that Havertz's place in the team probably up for debate?
I think the debate will rumble on all season as well, and that's not just with that position. I think it just shows the strength of the squad that Chelsea have got, really, because if they are going to challenge for the title, and I know Frank's sort of like trying to diminish those sort of ambitions, especially outward to the press, but I think there's going to be scraps and competition for all the positions all season. So they're obviously very different players, but I think it's just great that they can bring in, if Kai Havertz isn't having a great game, Pulisic is ready to come on and obviously a lot more direct and maybe on the eye for someone, a mere simpleton like me, Chris, he maybe does look a bit more direct because he's getting in behind and going at players.
Yeah, huge fan of Pulisic. Dave, you got any thoughts on Havertz? I know you just said you're a fan of Werner and Ziyech, so maybe he hasn't come to your attention quite as much. But, you know, over £70 million, what do you think is a decent first season for him? Because I do think at times we as fans expect these youngsters, I think he's, 19, 20, to settle within a matter of 5 or 6 game weeks, and that's not necessarily how it materialises. So what is a decent first season for Kai Havertz?
I think it's kind of how he responds to the Premier League, right? It's you've got, especially a young player, you just don't want him to go missing, right? He's not going to be able to control the Premier League like he may have been able to done, or when he was was it Bayer Leverkusen? I believe he really come from. It was almost like the team was built to an extent around him, right? So everything was geared up towards him. That's not going to be the case in the Premier League. It's not going to be the case for Chelsea. He's going to have to play within a system that Frank wants the team to play. So you just don't want him to go missing. You don't want him to kind of be shy. And I actually think he's done all right, as you say. We don't realize how young he is, and what's been very fruitful for Chelsea is that there's so much depth in that squad. You'd probably say, arguably, it's probably potentially the strongest squad in the Premier League. Potentially, you'd say that obviously, I'd say Liverpool definitely the best starting 11 without a shadow of a doubt. City starting 11 is very strong. Probably they've got 1 or 2 more additional squad players, but in terms of game changers, you'd say the Chelsea. Particularly their attacking force is kind of definitely up there with probably world football, to be honest. I think if he can, get a few goals, a few assists, but then it's when things are not going his way that he doesn't go missing and kind of doesn't let his head drop and still wants the ball and still wants to try and make things happen for Chelsea. For me, would be more of an encouraging sign than him coming out the gate early doors, getting 10 goals and assists first, 15 games, and then kind of tailing off. For me, it's more beneficial if a young player has a more consistent length of the season.
That's what I'd say. Yeah, that's what I'd say about Timo Werner. So I mean, he's not put up the frightening numbers that he was putting up at RB Leipzig, but he always feels like he's in the game, like you just highlighted there. Whereas Kai Havertz, I think it's been easier to manage him out of various Premier League fixtures, and there has been times where, no key passes, no shots, touches in the wrong areas. Right, he likes to play as a second striker. He's played as a number 10. He's kind of operated in wide areas as well for Chelsea at various points. So, yeah, let's just hope he kind of finds his position, because it feels like most of his other teammates have at the moment. Anyway, let's move on to Arsenal. Everton fans, congratulations. First win in 4. Moves you above Manchester United, doesn't it? But let's move on to Arsenal now. Go on, Will. What were you saying, mate?
No, I was just going to, I'm not the most tactically adept person here, but I did actually notice something tactically, Chris.
Oh, go on, mate.
Because when Everton lined up against Burnley, they had their back 5, and they've sort of almost stumbled on it when Fabian Delph had to go off injured. They moved Ben Godfrey to left back, and then, even in that Burnley game, that's when they equalised and kicked on, and they kept that for this game. And even though they've obviously gone one man less at the back, Ben Godfrey at left back, it's sort of like a new revelation and something Ancelotti sort of stumbled on, going back to that back 4, which has allowed Allen and Doucouré sort of to do their dirty business a little bit better.
Yeah, and that goes back to, I suppose, the conversation Dave was having just a second ago about depth. Teams like Everton and Leicester have a little bit more depth this season, which I think will make the challenge for Champions League football, let's say, a little bit more interesting after January. Of course, Leicester completely bottomed out, didn't they, from sort of February onwards. But that was largely because they were ravaged by injury, and that they have been at the start of this season as well, but they've had the signings to compensate for it. And Everton have that in Godfrey, for example, amongst other players. But let's go back to Arsenal, because it is ugly at the Emirates, Dave. They've now lost 4 home games in a row for the first time since 1959. They've only scored 10 goals in their last 12 Premier League games. That's their lowest tally since the early 80s. And the Gunners have also received 6 red cards since Mikel Arteta took over, more than any other side in this period. And now there is rumours of a dressing room crisis. So what I want to ask you about first and foremost, before we sort of unpick the Burnley game, is what do you make of Arteta versus Luiz, or Arteta versus Socrates and Mesut Ozil? Is there, or has there been, irreparable damage done, or do you think the board should double down, back the manager, and just get those players out as soon as possible?
I think one of the two has to happen. Either if Arteta's lost the dressing room and there's no way back, and the board then think, okay, it's going to be more beneficial in the long run for us to back these players over the manager, then Arteta needs to go, and that actually pains me to say. Or they need to completely back the manager and say, okay, there is clearly some rot that's set in at the moment. And it's really strange as well, because it's from the sounds of it, it's players that should have been moved on a long time ago anyway. For me, it's a no-brainer. They should be backing Arteta. They should be looking at what the root cause is here. So if they've identified, for example, Socrates and the influence that Ozil still has, like, they're already not doing a business for you on the pitch because they can't. So just move them on. Like, is there a way that they can cancel their contract, pay them up the rest of whatever the next 6 months is going to be, but then just to get them out of the dressing room, get them out of, because the thing is, well, right, we've got quite a young squad there, right? So senior players' influence is going to be a lot stronger. So yeah, for me, I think we need to back Arteta. He is young. He's going to make mistakes. For me, which was the game? I think it was the Villa game. That was the first time I actually couldn't see what he was trying to do, because it kind of just felt like we didn't really have a plan for that. And then obviously bad results start to kind of become a bit more frequent. Confidence is even lower. Then it's harder to pull yourself up and drag yourself out of that kind of circumstance. But I still back Arteta. I think, the job he did 6 months ago shouldn't be forgotten. But I think we need to I think it's more of a cultural change that we need to do. I think it's not necessarily changing from a 4-4-2 to a 3-5-1 or whatever it might be. It's like, I think there's a bit of rot that's setting in, and I think that's the thing that needs to be eradicated. The thing that I am a bit disappointed in, and I'm very concerned about, is the way that Arteta seems to have fallen out with some of these other young players, like your Salibas and stuff like that. He was obviously built to be a jewel in Arsenal's crown for the next 10 years. Yeah. And something's clearly gone wrong there. I saw some of the comments he did on Guendouzi's post about being kind of trapped, or he needs to be set free, or something along those lines. That's more of a concern for me. If he's falling out with a Socrates, okay, he's clearly sees days as numbered. Let's just get him out. But when you're falling out with a young player who you should be able to influence more, as a young man yourself, as someone who is a young player, should be looking up to their manager, right? You know, if he's lost that bit of respect. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done behind the scenes. It seems to be the same three players that can consistently play well for us. That's Kieran Tierney, Saka, and Gabriel, but they seem to be the only players. And you're not going to win many Premier League games when only 3 out of your starting 11 are consistently performing. It's just not. I think there's a lot of deadwood there. I'm going to go on a bit of a rant now, but I think there's a lot of players I'd like to see moved on. And if you want, I can name them. But if you want to move on to Will, then we can.
Name them and shame them, mate. Go on.
Hector
top
Bellerin.
3 players you want out.
Hector Bellerin needs to go.
Right.
I don't understand why Ainsley Maitland-Niles is not getting a look in there at that right back. Who else we got? Lacazette. There's nothing Arteta can do if Lacazette can't score from 6 yards. And it's been 3 or 4 times on this bad run we've been on, where, you know, if we take the lead in these games, they are different games. You know, yesterday, if we go in 1-0 at half time, it's a completely different game. You know,
even about the Kieran Tierney cutback.
It's like if he can't score from 6 yards, there's nothing he can do. Really, there's nothing like Arteta can do there, right? You know, I feel a bit sorry for Aubameyang. Don't get me wrong, when you're the captain, and I don't like it when people talk about the big wage with someone, because that's what the club's chosen to pay him. That bit doesn't bother me at all. But this clearly, I feel like the weight's a bit too much on him, which again is something where it doesn't speak very well, in my opinion, of Arteta, that he clearly is not getting the best out of his best player there. You know, so there's clearly something there that needs to be fixed. Who else we got?
You've got one more player. You've got Hector Bellerin.
Hector Bellerin, Xhaka, I said, right? Or was it Lacazette?
Xhaka. I don't know. You said Lacazette. Are you going to end it with Xhaka?
I think so. I think he probably should have been moved on a while ago. I think there must be a player. You know, don't get me wrong. I think if Thomas Partey's fit, I think he definitely starts, right? And then it's like one other that's playing alongside him. The thing is with Xhaka, right? He is what he is, right? He's a player that's in there to break play up. We'd like to think he's someone who can pick a great pass and split a defense. He's not that, you know. He's very what's the word, like, well, you can't trust him. You know he's going to pull someone back, and he's going to pick up a yellow that he doesn't need to go, then just puts the team under pressure, and then he's one bad challenge away from being sent off. You know, this isn't the first time he's done that. I think it's probably time to move him on. If we can get decent money for him, happy days. If we can get anything from him, even better. So yeah,
I love it, mate. It's been a long time since Dave Jackson went on a 5 to 10 minute rant about Arsenal. That was a real throwback, and I hope that was therapeutic for you, pal. But I'm going to ask you the same sort of question, Will. Obviously, you don't have to go down the same rabbit holes, but I think that's a good point by Dave, in the fact that the handling of various members in the squad, or people that maybe Arteta has deemed as Emery signings, has been objectively ruthless, I guess. Saliba frozen out the first team picture. Torreira sent off despite being quite young, you know, had a strong pedigree. I know he didn't necessarily demonstrate his best form in his couple of years at Arsenal, but I still believe there was something there. And Guendouzi, his attitude probably, you know, did permit at least a loan move out. Of course, he's playing all right now at Hertha Berlin, isn't he? But do you think Arteta, one, has lost the dressing room, and number two, do you think he's in over his head like a lot of people are proclaiming on Twitter? And obviously people need something, they need a narrative to cling to, don't they, on Twitter? And this seems to be one that's permeating. So do you think he's bitten off more than he can chew with this Arsenal job?
I think his coaching ability was clearly there. That's probably what got him the job. But maybe he needs to have a little read of like how to win friends and influence people, because maybe his person-to-person skills maybe aren't the best, and maybe it's a bit like Alan Pardew syndrome when the slide starts happening, he can't handle it. I think maybe the pressure of... You think when they were lining up for those games, like when you won the FA Cup semi-final and all those big games at the end of last year, he realised Arsenal aren't the club that they used to be, and he was catering for the big sides and setting up for those, and that's how they got the victories. And it seems like this year that's just sort of, especially over the last 6 weeks, just blown out the window, because I don't know if he feels like the pressure that he needs to sort of play the Arsenal way, whatever that is. And then I just think they've got such an abundance of youth and like exciting talent that they could use, that it's almost a bit like Lampard last season, where obviously he did exceed expectation and perform better than most people would have done, but he almost got not a free ride, because obviously still people criticise him, but because he was bringing through youth and he had those academy players on display, that I think there'd almost be a bit more forgiveness from Arsenal fans. That even like last night's not acceptable. Villa's not acceptable. I'm just trying to think what would be acceptable. Maybe he isn't out of his head, Dave, and maybe I don't know. I don't think he's going to get the sack though.
It is a complex issue, and we've talked about this at length on Sunday Vibes before, wherein you can't help but see Arteta does not have the personnel that he wants. I think he probably would have been promised another couple of windows. I think that will be brought forward to maybe just this January if results don't improve over Christmas. Of course, Arsenal currently in 15th place, and it's looking like I think they need to back him in the window and potentially, someone a bit more adept in the market than Edu comes in and helps him find those players, or another 3 or 4 losses, it starts to become untenable, doesn't it? Although he does have the backing of Kieran Tierney, who said we're looking to have a great manager after the game. So clearly there are some people in his camp, like you said, maybe the people that are playing well, Dave, but that only sort of adds to the impression there is a divide in the changing room. And just to break down the stats in this game, because I know you guys like it when we do that on winners and losers. 18 shots from Arsenal in this game, so a little bit more I don't use the word prolific, but a little bit more volume there than normal.
But they're not like real shots. This is like, it's the same when they're who they lose to last week when they kept crossing the ball.
Spurs.
But yeah, it's like they're not real chances. I know you love your stats and your XG and all that kind of bollocks, right?
And XG did have you down at 1.85, Dave. So you deserve to win this game, mate.
There's an awful lot of value in them. Don't get me wrong, but like in the reality, if you'd watched the game, it's like they're not. It's not like there'd be times on the Wenger, right, where we would batter teams and just be so unlucky where their goalkeeper would play well, but they're genuine shots on target, like where we've broken through the last line of defence, we're through on and we just haven't finished, right? These are like they're like almost like hopeful balls into the box and hoping. Our 6 foot striker Lacazette, not our 6'5" striker Lacazette, our 6 foot striker is going to outmuscle 2 centre halves. I'm pretty
sure he's below 6 foot. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Also, so I wasn't having a go at you and about your XG.
No, mate. I understand you're very angry right now. You've never been that into your stats, so I just wanted to give you a little reprieve to say that XG did have you down as winning this game, but yes, you have been very, very cross-centric in recent weeks. I think it's 40 plus crosses for the last 3 games, and Arteta, of course, almost infamously now said that it's just basic maths. If we keep doing that, something will come from it. I think that was 2 to 3 weeks ago, and nothing has. But you have to admit he has been unlucky, and 6 red cards in that period. It's gonna cost you, isn't it? Particularly when you've got a threadbare squad. But is the squad threadbare because he's let players go forward and out of players and unnecessarily? You know what? You did put together a class video with Adidas Originals, though, mate. So there is swings and roundabouts. Right, that is the end of our kind of breakdown of 2 matches. But I did want to ask you, lads, who were your winners from this week and who were your losers? Starting with you, Will, in the winners section.
Can I just be honest about my winner? I was sort of going back and forth, but my winner is actually me for bringing Jan Bednarak into my fantasy team at 4.5 million for him to get a clean sheet and an assist and 3 bonus points. And let's just say that is pure genius from me.
Quality. What about you, Dave? Any hope?
My winner is the Southampton manager. I think he's doing an absolute phenomenal job there. I think it's not only is he getting results, he's playing a style of football that you'd be proud of. He's got the best out of all, essentially his squad. Isn't just he's starting 11. Like I was watching the game yesterday, and he's got Theo Walcott playing like a genuine top player now. And that's not a dig at Walcott. It's a manager getting the best out of his players, looking at what the players he needs to play the formation and the style of play that he wants to play, and he's getting results. And I think for me, it's a Southampton manager.
Yeah, I think it's a great shout. I think Southampton have only started 1 Premier League campaign since it was reformatted in better fashion than this season. Ralph Hasenhutt's men absolutely crushing it. We've got some suggestions here from Valentino_CPFC. He's gone Higuita for the excellent performance against Tottenham Hotspur. Got Zain Shambodian SM. He's gone West Ham who are on 20 points after 12 games. Only reached that benchmark sooner in one Premier League campaign. That was 2015-16. I'm going to go Jamie Vardy. I, of course, didn't watch Arsenal versus Burnley. I watched Leicester versus Brighton, where Jamie Vardy contributed to 3 goals and had about 1.5 touches. 14 Premier League goals and assists in under 1,000 minutes this campaign. He just continues to defy Father Time, doesn't he? Who are our losers then? Will, starting with you, mate.
I think we touched on
Arsenal. Are we just going to agree it's Arsenal and add no diversity to this and just move on? I think we should. I think that's a good shout, Will. You've
It doesn't get much worse than that.
No, you looked a little bit, remorseful there, like you didn't want to take Dave back through it, and I respect it. There's a strong team ethos on this week's show. Right, let's move on to the numbers game then. I'm going to start with you, Dave. Because you weren't on last week, I'll explain the basic premise. We've got some numbers from various fixtures from this Premier League week, and you have to guess the context of the number. It doesn't have to be exact. I am quite a soft judge. So here we go. Will got 3 for 3 last week, so no pressure, mate. But the number is 19.98, and I'm going to give you a clue already. That metric is in seconds.
So am I trying to provide the context for that stat?
You're providing the context for this stat.
Okay.
I know, Chris. If Dave doesn't know, I know.
19.8 seconds. That is some kind of speed that Theo Walcott did. No?
No, absolutely not. I'm passing it over to Will, who doesn't get the point, but of course gets to revel in his own right answer if it's correct.
Would that be the goal time of Miguel Almiron against West Brom at the weekend?
That is absolutely spot on. Who's nailed on to go down more, Will? West Bromwich Albion or Sheffield United?
Oh, God. I actually think they're both probably nailed on to go down. Sheffield United didn't offer anything in that Southampton game. West Brom, I think they're pinning their defensive hopes on bringing in 36-year-old Branislav Ivanovic. That's probably not a wise move. And Pereira out for 3 games as well. He was sort of one of the only attacking threats that they did have. And they couldn't beat that Newcastle team that was absolutely ravaged by COVID, hadn't been training at all. And Dwight Gale popped up with a goal. So I think they're both doomed.
Yeah, I would think so too, to be honest. Right, you might get this because you've just been speaking about the game in hand. That is your clue. But the number is 1 for your first stat in the numbers game, William. The number is 1.
Could I have a clue, please, Jeff?
It is from the Southampton versus Sheffield United game. And it's not necessarily an in-match stat. It can be, a broader context.
Oh, 1 point. That's all Sheffield United have got after the start of the season.
1 point. Only the 4th side to be stuck on a solitary point after 12 game weeks in English football history. The other 3, Newport, New Brighton. New Brighton what? And Manchester United. So, a historically bad start to the campaign. And talking of historically bad starts, we're back to Dave for his second go. Do you get the concept of the game
mate,
now,
I get
David?
it.
Quality. Right. He told you he doesn't like stats, and that has continued into this round. So the number is 3, and it is from the Manchester Derby. Has to do with a lack of goals, let's say.
Yeah, 3 saves that De Gea made.
No, I'm sure he did make 3+ saves in that game, but it's the amount of home games that United have failed to score in this season, more than the entirety of the last campaign. We'll move on from Man United because that game was absolutely atrocious, to be honest. That's probably one of my moments of the weekend, actually. We'll touch upon that in a second. Roy Keane being absolutely repulsed by the fact that John Stones and Maguire were hugging at full time. Absolutely love that. Right, your last one. Is your last one? No, you just answered one of Dave's correctly. It's your second one. The number is 43, and it's from that draw with Tottenham and Crystal Palace, mate.
43.
To do with a goal scorer, let's say.
Harry Kane's 43rd goal of the calendar year.
Oh, not bad. I'm tempted to give you half a point for that, but it's how many Premier League goals Harry Kane has been involved in since Jose Mourinho took
Nah, don't give me
charge.
I had someone come up to me the other day and said I didn't deserve a point from last week, so I want to get rid of that narrative completely that anyone is helping me.
Fair play. Right, Dave, your last one.
Yes, mate.
For some sort of reprieve. The number is 11, and it's from Fulham versus Liverpool, and it's... I'm going to give you a big clue here. It's to do with points.
11 points. Fulham have 11 points so far this season.
No, I think they'd absolutely lap up 11 points. Not a bad guess, but it's how many points Liverpool have dropped already this campaign. They only dropped 15 in 19-20 altogether. Right, Will, your last one. The number is 74, and it is to do with Dave's beloved Arsenal. This is a really hard one, and it's because you mopped up last week. And you made a
what was the number? What was the number?
74.
Is that the amount of possession Arsenal had yesterday?
It's not bad.
Now, can I have a guess?
Yes. Go on.
It's 74. Like the number of chances Aubameyang's had since he last scored from open play or something.
No, it's not. But that is probably alarmingly close to the truth. It's Arsenal's worst start to the league season since 1974. That was a very, very tough one. I will admit.
It's cheeky, that hammer.
Well, you have prevailed, but I do want to ask you some context around this question. Where did Birmingham finish in that year's edition of the English First Division?
God.
If you get it within one, I'll buy you a treat.
I think I've seen ticket that year. I'll go for 11th.
17th. And Chelsea came...
I don't know why I was so positive.
Chelsea came 21st, relegated with Carlisle and Luton. That brings us nicely to our moment of the weekend then. I've already given you mine. It's Roy Keane absolutely disgusted that the Manchester Derby, had become such a tepid affair. Will, what was your standout moment or favourite moment?
It was Jan Bednarak, to be fair, just because I couldn't believe my luck. Hang on, just 10 seconds.
Right, let's go to Dave then while Will has a little think. Struggling. What about you, David?
Highlight was it probably finishing, mate? Been put out my misery.
This show on such a sad
I'll give you
note,
something.
guys.
I'll give you something nice. My highlight of the weekend, of the footballing weekend, was.
You know what?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I've got it, Chris.
All right, saved by the bell.
My football highlight of the weekend was seeing Jimmy Maddison finally coming back into some absolute world-class form. That second goal that he scored, little dribbling around the area, and then that left foot curler into the back of the net. Obviously got a goal before that as well. Jimmy Maddison putting the pressure on, not just Jack Grealish, but Gareth Southgate for that Euro 2021.
Yeah, for sure. Really nice to see him overcome some persistent injuries. Brendan Rodgers obviously managing his time really well. I think he was hauled off after about 74 minutes. Still won man of the match.
James Justin in that game as well. He was he could have had about 3 or 4 assists on that from the right back.
Turning to Dani Alves, that little tactical tweak, I think probably after 30-40 minutes where Albrighton came out to the left in a 4-2-3-1 and James Justin went straight to right back from a 3-4-3. I think that absolutely killed Brighton, and that is Brendan Rodgers is bloody good, as infuriating as it is to admit, and is having a good time of it. But so is Maddison, like you said. That was his first brace in the Premier League, so let's hope he can chip in with some more goals and assists and keep improving year on year. We got there. We got to the end of the show. I've got to say, I don't think we made Dave feel any better throughout that. I think the sadness got more palpable as the show went on. So can you leave Dave some positive comments in the comments below, please? Just, support him for the rest of the season. He is going to need you to put the wind back in his sails. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, keep feeding back on the new winners and losers. We want to hear your opinion. It really does matter. Bye, guys. See you next week.
Peace.